Welcome to The Explainer. We are jumping right in today because we're about to unpack one of the most magnificent, enduring, and honestly globally influential societies in all of human history, the ancient Chinese civilization. We're going to look at the epic scale of this culture. We'll start from its volatile origins along the banks of some seriously powerful rivers and trace it all the way to its monumental legacy of global trade and world-changing inventions. If you want a clear, direct understanding of how this ancient powerhouse laid the foundations for the modern world we live in today, you are in the exact right place.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're hitting the origins by the Yellow River, the great Chinese dynasties, society and beliefs, economy and trade, world-changing innovations, and finally, the decline of the civilization. Let's get right into it.
Section 1, Origins by the Yellow River. Let's look at the harsh but incredibly rewarding physical environment that essentially forced this brilliant society into existence.
You know, every great civilization needs a geographic cradle, and for China, that cradle was the banks of the Huanghe. This river provided abundant water, which was absolutely critical for early irrigation and cultivation. But you might be wondering, why is it famously called the Yellow River? Well, as the water flows, it picks up massive amounts of sand, clay, and specifically this very fine silt. All that heavy sediment actually turns the water a distinctive yellow color, but more importantly, it deposits incredibly fertile soil right along the banks, which allowed early farming communities to just absolutely thrive and grow.
But this life-giving river had a much darker, destructive side. It actually earned the ominous nickname, the Sorrow of China. Because of all that silt buildup we just talked about, the river frequently changed its course. And this caused devastating, completely unpredictable floods that would wipe out entire harvests, destroy early irrigation canals, and create immense hardship for the people living nearby. However, this struggle was actually a catalyst. To survive, the early Chinese civilization was forced to organize. They had to innovate. They engineered and built massive public works, specifically dikes and embankments, just to control the floodwaters and protect their precious farmland.
Moving on to Section 2, the Great Chinese Dynasties. Building on that hard-won agricultural surplus, we start to see the rise of highly structured, incredibly powerful ruling families. Let's walk through centuries of continuous progression here. We start way back around 1600 BCE with the Shang Dynasty, which gives us the Bronze Age and the earliest forms of writing. Then around 1046 BCE, we enter the Zhou Dynasty. This is often called the Classical Age of China, famous for its incredible philosophers. Fast forward to 221 BCE, and we hit the Qin Dynasty, a short but wildly impactful era that unified separate states into a single entity. And right on its heels in 206 BCE, the Han Dynasty emerges, kicking off a golden age of stability and opening up the legendary Silk Route. It's just a relentless, remarkable evolution of power. And the sheer scale of ambition during these dynastic periods is just breathtaking. Different Chinese states had built separate protective walls over the centuries, starting as early as the 7th century BCE. But it was the Emperor Qin Shi Huang, right after unifying China in 221 BCE, who connected many of these separate walls together. Stretched across provinces from the East Coast all the way to the Western deserts, the Great Wall spans an astonishing total length of over 21,000 kilometers. Its primary purpose? To protect the newly unified China from the constant threat of invasions by nomadic tribes sweeping in from the north. Section 3. Society, Beliefs, and Culture. Now, to build massive things like the Great Wall and manage millions of people over vast territories, you need extreme organization. To manage an empire of this size, a strict top-down hierarchy was absolutely essential. At the very pinnacle was the king, the most powerful person holding total control over the administration and the military. Directly beneath him were the nobles, who assisted in governance and wartime command. The rest of society was rigidly divided into classes. You had merchants, skilled craftsmen, farmers, and at the bottom, slaves. But the true foundational unit of Chinese society, it wasn't the individual, it was the family. The family was considered sacred. It was a deeply patriarchal structure where the male head of the household commanded great respect, and ancestors and elders were highly revered. Women largely worked within the household, playing an indispensable central role in daily family life. Now, during the Zhou Dynasty, this highly organized society gave birth to two defining yet completely contrasting mentalities. On one side, we have Taoism, founded by Lao Tse. Taoism is all about living simply,
not forcing things, and finding balance. It champions the concept of wu-wei, or effortless action, basically just going with the natural flow of the universe. On the flip side, we have Confucianism, founded by Confucius. This was much more focused on societal structure. It emphasized strict responsibilities, immense respect for parents and elders, and placed a huge importance on education. Together, these two philosophies profoundly shaped the entire Chinese psychological and cultural landscape.
Another major pillar of their cultural unity was their remarkable writing system. It's a pictographic and ideographic script, meaning the symbols directly represent ideas and objects. And what's absolutely fascinating is that the earliest writings weren't on paper. They were carved into animal bones, which were often used by ancient fortune tellers to predict the future. Over time, they transitioned to using fine brushes on elegant silk cloth. But the most incredible fact about the Chinese script is its resilience. It has changed very little over thousands of years, preserving their ancient philosophies and records exactly as they were originally intended.
Which brings us to Section 4, Economy and Global Trade. Let's see how this unified, intellectually rich culture channeled its energy into becoming an absolute economic powerhouse.
A massive part of that economic dominance really comes down to one word: silk culture. Silk culture is the delicate, highly complex process of producing silk from silkworms. The Chinese were the very first people on Earth to master this, and let me tell you, they guarded the secret fiercely. In fact, smuggling silkworms out of China was a crime punishable by death. No joke. This extreme secrecy gave them an exclusive monopoly on a luxurious product that the rest of the entire world desperately wanted. Silk quickly became an integral part of Chinese culture, and more importantly, it became their most valuable, high-demand export. And that skyrocketing demand created one of the most famous trade networks in human history. The Silk Road wasn't just a single road. It was a massive web connecting China deep into India, across to Egypt and North Africa, and all the way into Europe. Chinese merchants exported their exclusive silk, fragrant tea, and exquisite chinaware or porcelain. In return, foreign nations essentially emptied out their treasuries, sending vast amounts of gold and silver flowing right back into China. This single trade route created a global ripple effect of wealth and cultural exchange that completely defined the era.
Section 5, World-Changing Innovations. Let's see how this wealth and focus builds an environment completely ripe for technological leaps that alter human history far beyond just trade. You have to hear about this piece of ancient engineering. This is a Chinese seismograph, an instrument designed to detect earthquakes long before anything resembling modern technology existed. The design is just brilliant. When an earthquake occurred, even if it was far away, a pendulum mechanism inside would trigger, causing one of the bronze dragons on the outside to drop a small ball directly into the waiting mouth of a bronze frog sitting below it. The specific frog that caught the ball would tell the emperor's court exactly which direction the earthquake had struck from. It is such an ingenious, practical application of science and mechanics. But honestly, that seismograph is just the tip of the iceberg. The major contributions of the Chinese to the modern world are staggering. They gave us modern papermaking, which replaced clumsy bamboo slips and super expensive silk. They invented the magnetic compass, fundamentally changing global navigation and exploration forever. They discovered gunpowder, entirely altering the course of global warfare. They engineered highly complex astronomical clocks. And of course, they were the very first civilization to cultivate tea. They initially used it for medicinal purposes, before it became the universally popular beverage we all drink today. Finally, Section 6, Decline of the Civilization. Because even a civilization this vast, innovative, and wealthy couldn't remain untouchable forever.
The decline of the dynastic system was a multi-step process brought on by internal fractures and external forces. First, the empire suffered from a string of weak rulers and deep-seated corruption in the administration. Second, rapid population growth led to severe economic problems and resource scarcity. And, naturally, this sparked the third step: massive internal rebellions that really destabilized the country. Finally, a weakened China faced foreign invasions and aggressive Western influence, most notably the Opium Wars. The British, seeking to balance their trade deficit from buying all that Chinese silk and tea, began importing the intoxicating substance opium into China. This led to the First Opium War between the British and China, and later the Second Opium War, where both British and French forces fought the Chinese, leading to disastrous defeats for the ancient empire.
And the final external blows actually came closer to home. Driven by conflicts over control and influence in Korea, China found itself at war with a rapidly modernizing Japan. The First Sino-Japanese War, and later the Second Sino-Japanese War, resulted in devastating defeats for China.
These compounding military losses against both Western and regional powers thoroughly shattered the illusion of imperial invincibility, signaling the absolute end of the ancient dynastic system.
So as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. We've seen their incredible rise from the muddy banks of the Yellow River to becoming the architects of the Great Wall, the pioneers of the Silk Route, and the inventors of paper, compasses, and gunpowder. Despite the eventual fall of the dynasties, their legacy is truly immortal. Just look around you. From the clothes we wear, to the tea we drink, to the paper we write on, how much of our modern hyper-connected world is literally still running on the foundation built by ancient China thousands of years ago? Think about that next time you look at a compass or sip your morning tea. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this incredible topic. Keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.